Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Roundtable Talk. This week I'm here with Brett Malmud and I'm Mike Bergner, and we're going to be examining the NHL Playoffs, the NBA Playoffs, and a little bit other things going on around the sports world. So let's start off with the NHL Playoffs and the Blues and the Wild series.
So the Blues actually got taken down 4-2 against the Wild. The Wild, the better team on top. I'm not sure how far they'll go, though. They'll end up matching up with the Blackhawks in the second round. And so it should be interesting to see that series go on.
Yeah, Patrick Kane was very influential in the Blackhawks Predator series, which they won 4-2. So I think you're right, that should be a good matchup.
Yeah, and you look at a tough team like the Predators, who had a phenomenal season, and the Blackhawks took them down. That experience that we talked about a couple weeks ago really came into play. Of course, their goaltender, Scott Darling, taking over the series for those middle games before Corey Crawford comes back in, takes over, and ends the series.
Right. And now let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets getting swept. I mean, did anyone really expect anything else?
Well, I did expect them to win at least one game, but the clean sweep here, the Ducks right now are the hot team. They got the hot goalie, the hot forwards. They're really, right now, the top contender in the West, so we should see.
And who are they looking to match up with in the next round?
They're going to end up matching up with Calgary. Of all teams,
Okay.
Calgary came flying in the last couple days of the season and ended up taking over that last spot, which was manned by the Los Angeles Kings, who went on to win the Stanley Cup. So they'll have a tough matchup. But I do see the Ducks ended up going in 6. It should be a good series, though, one for the ages.
Yeah, the Flames Game 6 was a really good game to watch. So we'll move over into the East, where we look at the Canadiens beating the Senators. The Senators almost made a run, right? That was interesting.
Yeah, so the Senators took it to 6 games. They made a run late in the season. Mark Stone really took over their game. Unfortunate for them that it came out as a loss, but they have to move on, and they should have a good series coming up as well.
Yeah, and we still don't know who they're playing. The Red Wings and Lightning have their Game 6 still to play.
Yeah, both teams are really good teams in the playoffs, and we should see who moves on right now. The Red Wings are up 3-2, Game 6 coming on Monday night, and so we'll see if the Red Wings can move on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Lightning have been really good in the past in the playoffs. So our own New York Rangers have moved on into the next round, beating the Pittsburgh Penguins 4-1. Right, we're excited about that. And the other New York team, Brett, how are they doing?
So you mentioned the Rangers. The Rangers probably in one of the most competitive 5-game series that we've seen in recent years with the Penguins, and it just so happened that they overmatched them, took them down 4-1. And then on the other side, we have the Islanders and the Capitals, who will face off in Game 7 Monday night. And so we're going to see, that's going to be a great game. Right now it seems that both teams are gunning for that last breath of air before one of their seasons is going to end on Monday night.
Yeah, both extremely hard-fought series. That 4-1 that the Rangers beat the Penguins, not really telling of how the series went. There were 2 overtime games. It was very intense. And the Islanders Capitals, of course, 3-3. And when the Islanders almost looked like they were sure to win.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned that it was almost short of a win, and it came in what would have been the last game at Nassau Coliseum. It still could be if they end up losing on Monday night. It would be the last game at Nassau Coliseum. But it would be kind of interesting to see them take on the Rangers if they do get to that point. And maybe the Rangers are the guys that close out the Coliseum, which of course the Ranger fans would love to do.
Right, so who do you see after the first round is basically over? Who do you think is like the hot team coming in right now?
Well, I thought it was going to be the Blues at first when I made my initial predictions, but right now it seems that it's the Blackhawks and the Ducks out in the West. Not really a lot of hot teams in the East. They're all kind of jockeying for position right now against the other competitors, and so we'll see if the East can eventually take over the West, but right now it seems those Western Conference teams are the strong focal point.
All right, thanks. And that's been the NHL with Brett Malmud. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our little roundtable talk that we have going on here. Now that we've talked about the NHL, we're going to look over to the NBA playoffs, which has had some very exciting series, but actually quite a few sweeps. And there's a very varying level of the elite teams and the other teams. So we have the Golden State Warriors versus the New Orleans Pelicans. That series over. That was a sweep. What did you think of the games?
Well, I thought Steph Curry was Steph Curry.
Mm-hmm.
The first 3 games, he had, how many points? He had almost 100 points in 3 games, which is pretty good, which was expected of him. And so we now look forward, and they're ready to make a run. I think this is a championship caliber team. They have the pieces. They have their focal point in a 3-point shooter. And if the threes keep dropping, I think Golden State's on its way to the championship.
Yeah, I think so too, especially since their way there doesn't seem to be blocked by that many challenging teams. They could face either Portland or Memphis. Most likely it looks like Memphis, and they're playing well against Portland, but I don't really see anyone except maybe San Antonio taking them on in a round. But right now, that's a challenging series tied at 2-2 with the Clippers. That series is good. What do you think, Brett?
Yeah, well, so you look at a series that we were looking at from the beginning, and we were like, wow, that's going to be a great series. And it turned out that it was. And, now we're tied 2-2. We're looking who's going to get in, and basically I think that whoever gets in ahead is going to get to that Western Conference spot to play for the title, to see who goes to the championship. And I think that the Spurs right now are the team that I'm going to pick right out the bat to go ahead.
I also think I'm going to pick the Spurs. You don't really go against experience like that in a situation like the playoffs. Blake Griffin is playing how the Clippers want to see him play.
Lights
He's
out.
driving in,
Lights
he's
out.
taking lots of shots, making lots of nice rebounds. I think that experience like Tim Duncan's and Tony Parker's is what's going to propel the Spurs into the next round and should carry them through most of this playoffs. The team that they could face is either the Houston Rockets or the Dallas Mavericks. Now the Mavericks are down 3-1, and I don't really see that changing.
Yeah, the Mavericks didn't really look good so far in the playoffs. Dirk didn't really have it. You can see an angry Mark Cuban sitting on the sidelines. But it seems like Houston coming in that last month, they were the hot team. We were talking about, King James and James Harden being James Harden, and I think that is another possibility of somebody that could knock off the Spurs or the Clippers, whoever advances. But I do see the Spurs or the Clippers right now as that hot team. But Houston, look out for them.
Yeah, James Harden and Dwight Howard seem to be really shacking up. So we'll look over into the other games. The Atlanta-Brooklyn series, Brooklyn got a win, which is nice to see, being from New York, but surprising. I don't see them doing much more. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it was definitely surprising to see. It was also surprising to see that nobody ended up going to the game. If you looked at the post-game photos of all the T-shirts that were left there, it was pretty surprising. But they do get a win. I don't see them winning anymore. Atlanta right now, the hot team. Of course, they're the 1 seed. I think that they're going to move on.
Yeah. The Washington series, 5 seed versus 4 against Toronto, surprising that Washington swept. Seeing John Wall take over the game, the Raptors didn't really have an answer, and they kind of looked weak. Not Washington, of course, the Raptors, I mean.
Yeah, of course. I picked them as my dark horse team, so, told you so. But Washington right now is that team that can make a run. Toronto, of course, is that team that can always choke in the playoffs, and we've seen it in recent years. It happened here. They got swept, and so now Washington moves on to face either Brooklyn or Atlanta.
And we'll go down, and Chicago, Milwaukee. Chicago is really healthy for the first time in a long time, and they're playing like it. They're playing really well, some really good basketball.
Yeah, they're a scary team as well. Having everybody healthy, you mentioned, is an extremely vital part of their success, and so I think that they're going to win their next game. They'll take the series 4-1.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like Milwaukee not to win the series. I just like them because there's a kid from Long Island. Tobias Harris plays for them, obviously. So that's always fun to see. Someone like, people who played him.
Yeah.
Anyways, the Cleveland-Boston series has ended in a sweep for Cleveland. As they say, this is expected because LeBron James is LeBron James. But in the last game, Kevin Love, one of their big three, got injured in the shoulder. He should be out for a couple weeks. How do you think that affects them?
I think it affects more of Kevin Love personally. He's going into free agency this year. We're not really sure if Cleveland's going to go back after him. And so now he's a free agent, and what are the teams that are looking at him? Well, right now the top contender was Boston. And Boston, who just faced him, they're looking at his shoulder injury, and it could be very scary for a basketball player. And so now they're a little hesitant on whether or not they're going to go after him. We'll see if they do. As for Cleveland, LeBron James took over this series, plain and simple, and we'll see if he has that second man in Kevin Love. It'll be good, but of course he does have Kyrie Irving as well, who took over, and so Cleveland, of course, bound to make a run.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, regardless, they do have Kyrie Irving. Kevin Love they have a week off before their next game in whoever they face. But I think if he doesn't play the first 4 games, which is what his timetable is slated at right now, that could be a big help to Chicago. Go up, 2-2 by game 4, 3-1 maybe. Right?
Yeah, and of course, if you stop LeBron James, then basically he has to dish it to Kyrie. And Kyrie, as we've seen, Kyrie by himself in recent seasons isn't really such a great point guard. He needs that second guy, and LeBron, of course, is that second guy to him. But you look at Chicago's defense; they've been lights out defense as always for the last couple seasons. So if they can stop LeBron, we're really looking at a series here. It should be an interesting series to see.
Yeah, and we're gonna move on to the MLB. The Subway Series, first of the season, was held this weekend. The Yankees took the series 2-1. They were good games, though.
Yeah, of course, great games. Things to look out for in there. Alex Rodriguez, of course, hit that monster home run last night. What could you say? He's just having a great season. It's great to see.
1 away from tying Willie Mays' record, 660.
Yeah, everyone seems to like that stat except for the Yankees, who don't really. We'll see if they end up paying it. The $6 million bonus, of course, I'm referring to, that he would get if he does tie him. So we'll see if he does get to that. I'm sure that he will within the next week, but we'll see. It should definitely be an event to look forward to.
I mean, I know we're only like 19, 20 games into the season, but he has 5 home runs, puts him on pace for 30 home runs for the season. That'd be pretty impressive after being out of baseball for a year and a half.
Yeah, and of course, and it really is. It's great to see the redemption story that Alex has gone through over the last year. Not playing in baseball, and just comes back and has a phenomenal season.
Yeah.
And hopefully he's clean while he's doing it. I'd expect him to be.
Definitely under a lot more scrutiny right now.
Right, of course. And so the other thing to look at is CC Sabathia. Didn't really have a great outing on Saturday. Really kind of proved the fact that he's not their ace anymore. Maybe he's even a number 3 starter right now behind Pineda as well.
I'd agree.
So, looking at that, looking forward, we should see how CC does. But, yeah, Saturday was not a great outing for him.
Yeah, but the Mets were on a 12-game winning streak before they got stopped by the Bombers. So
yeah, of course.
That's nice to see.
So, you look at the Mets, and the Mets right now are a red-hot team. Even with this series coming in, they had all those wins in a row. And, we weren't expecting to win all 162 games. It wasn't going to happen. They were going to lose eventually. It just so happened that it was to the Yankees. And of course, they had that little Twitter fight, as you saw Sunday night, with the Mets and the Yankees trading jabs at each other. No one really coming out on top. Just, it was funny.
It was just a little fun. They weren't really doing it to be mean. Well, another thing that happened in baseball, Adam Wainwright of the Cardinals will probably be out for the season with a ruptured Achilles heel injury. There'll be some more developing information on that in the next couple of days. But an interesting point brought up by it happened while he was batting, not while he was pitching. So the DH rule, and how do you feel about it? I know I'm a little skeptical.
Well, I've always been in favor of the DH rule. I think that it creates another position for a player to be up there. It also weakens the bullpen a bit, but you're not getting as much of shoulder injuries when you're at bat. We've seen too many shoulder injuries with pitchers in recent years, of course, in batting activities. And so I really think it's the time that, the purists be quiet, and just let the game flow. We're in a new age where shoulder injuries have become way too much for pitchers, and I think that both leagues should have equality and have a designated hitter.
I agree. I think there really should be a DH position in both leagues. It is fun to see the pitchers get up to bat, but when you're thinking about longevity and career, these pitchers now, they're built just to pitch. They're not built to hit like in the old days. And honestly, when the pitchers you think of, they're built to pitch, but they're built to pitch with such high velocity that's why they need the 5 days rest, and not like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, where pitchers could come out and throw games 2 days apart because we didn't know that much about resting and stuff. So I think some research should really be done about that for the DH position with pitchers batting.
Yeah, and of course, and you look at the AL pitchers, and they tape up their entire arm because that should just show you how sore they are. And to then go hit on top of that, it really takes your arms out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with the longevity of the careers, you've seen most of the pitchers actually transition to an AL team so that they do not have to hit. So moving forward, I do see baseball as a changing sport. We've seen it with instant replay that everybody was against.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think the DH is in order for the NL.
Right. And, it's another interesting topic to talk about in terms of controversy in baseball is the parks, the distances in the parks, the inconsistency that they have, whereas every other sport is very precise, distinct, everything is to a T. Baseball is unique in that the park can make it whatever it wants to be.
Yeah, of course. You look at like Yankee Stadium, you can't compare that to another sport with like Madison Square Garden. Like, what if the sideline was 5 feet more at Madison Square Garden? It would be a completely different game. But I think that's what's great about baseball is that each city has its own unique little niche about their park. And so like you look at Fenway Park and you have to hit over the monster, and you kind of mold your hitters towards that. So the Yankee Stadium right field porch, that's 314 feet. You kind of mold your hitters towards that. And now we look this series at the Mets Yankees, where Met fans were complaining, oh, that wouldn't be a home run in Citi Field. Well, in the Yankees' standpoint, that is a home run every single time. It would have hit the top of the wall, or it would have gone over in most other ballparks. And so I think it's kind of cool that you see this difference in different ballparks. It kind of gives the cities get their own little niche in baseball.
And I guess that's why home field advantage is so important and why they play for it at the All-Star break.
Right, of course. And so that's actually the reason why they have done it, and I think that that's something that should continue because it's made the All-Star game such a festival that we like to watch, as opposed to like the Pro Bowl, where maybe that something comes into play with that in the next couple of years.
They've been talking about that. That's true. But I guess home field advantage is so important. I don't know if you've seen, but the Miami Dolphins' new stadium in football, the whole stadium will be in about 92% of shade, and the 8% that's not shaded is the opposite team's sideline and a couple rows of seats behind it, so that they're in the heat and the sun the whole game. And in Miami, it's always hot.
Yeah, of course. And so you see that as a home field advantage kind of a thing, which is kind of cool. It's their own little way of having baseball. And you take a look at what it used to be. The Miami Marlins, when they were the Florida Marlins, they actually used to play there. And so you'd see the outfield grass has that wear and tear of a football field towards the end of the season. And so, in the NL East, when they normally play towards the end of the season, you look and the grass is totally worn, and so for outfielders it's a little tougher. So there's that other side of the home field advantage, but it's definitely one to continue in baseball. I don't see it changing.
Great. So now that we've looked at baseball, we're going to jump over and just take a quick look at this coming weekend, May 2nd, probably one of the biggest days in sports in recent memory. The Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather fight and their 141st running of the Kentucky Derby. I mean, that happens every year, but the fact that they fall on the same weekend, I heard Vegas has no rooms left for quite a few miles.
Yeah, and you wouldn't expect it the biggest fight probably that we'll see this decade, and maybe even next decade. I don't see any of these fighters coming anywhere near what Pacquiao and Mayweather have, and so that should be a great fight. And then of course the Kentucky Derby, one of the biggest Vegas gambling events, and so yeah, it's definitely expected.
Right. So as far as the Kentucky Derby, let's just do a quick. Which horse do you think will win?
Well, I always go by the name, so I'm going to take Ocho Ocho Ocho, because you can't get a better name than that. And I think it would just be fun to hear the announcer scream Ocho 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 the entire time.
I'm going to go with Danzig Moon. A little bit more thought behind it. His sire, Danzig, was a race runner a couple years ago, and I remember him running. So
it's another great
I'm going
name.
with him.
Another great name.
Yeah, I guess it's fun to say too. But so let's take a more in-depth look at this Pacquiao Mayweather fight. Who do you think will win? What do you think will be the deciding factor? Are you excited?
I'm very excited. I don't normally get excited for these kinds of fights. I'm not really into the boxing, but I think that this is a fight that we will remember for years to come. Those "where were you" kind of things. And we look at Pacquiao, and Pacquiao is now going against an undefeated 47-0 Mayweather. And so taking that task, of course, Mayweather, some argue that his fighters that he faced weren't as strong. I don't see that at all. I see Mayweather as that, he is the Russian, per se, in Rocky. And so I do think that they take him down. I think Pacquiao's going to win, but it should be a great fight. Definitely one to watch.
I don't know who I think I want to win. I think I want Pacquiao to win, but I don't know. Mayweather's got the power. Pacquiao's got the speed. They're both older now than when everyone wanted to see them fight a few years ago. I don't know exactly what made them want to fight now. I guess the money. It's going to be the most paid fight in history. They're each getting roughly, I think, $100 million to do this fight in terms of royalties and all of that. So, Pacquiao does so much. He was elected for the Philippine House of Representatives. So he focuses on things outside of boxing, whereas Mayweather is a pure boxer. Pacquiao came from the streets. He learned to fight there. But I think overall, I really just want to see this fight go the distance. I don't want it to be a 2-round knockout, Mayweather knocking out Pacquiao. I want to see them go the distance. I want to get a good fight for my money for pay-per-view. So I think in the end, Pacquiao's going to win in a decision. Is what I'm calling.
Yeah, and I think that that's what America wants to see right now. I don't really think that they want to see that Ronda Rousey 14 seconds, and that's it. I think we want to see a real fight that at least goes 2 rounds, maybe 3. But yeah, I do have Pacquiao in a decision, not a knockout.
All right, I would agree with you. And that's all that we have for this week. Thanks for joining us with Brett Malmer. I'm Mike Bergner, and I hope you've enjoyed sitting around our table.